Reset. We are going deep today. It's going to be a big conversation. I have avoided it, and I think it's time. And I couldn't think of another topic because this is on my mind. So let's dive in to the divided, very divisive society that we're living in, and how there's just so much anger. And specifically, I think this conversation is about Canada. We're in election day today, so like us Canadians, we're quite lovely generally. We don't sling arrows as much as maybe some other places, or our leaders tend to. On the whole, I mean, we have dirty politics, but I feel like this election has been worse. And to the point where I was on LinkedIn, so professional platform where you kind of expect people who are like they're representing themselves and where they work would sort of mind their P's and Q's a little bit more than Facebook. But one of the news outlets had a story, and this was a few weeks ago, and I just started reading the comments, and I was like, I was having an anxiety attack. It was so, I was gobsmacked about how rude and aggressive and mean, and like if somebody had a differing opinion, you would like somebody would say you need to go to another country, just saying things about like whether it was about Afghanistan, about like just all of the hot button ticket topics that are out there in our society. Now, not that I don't suggest people should be angry. I mean, anger is a very natural emotion. There are a lot of really important issues that are happening out in our world right now. And I think that to suggest that we shouldn't have conversation, that we shouldn't be finding solution, that people should, just suck up and not say anything is not at all what I'm saying here. But I think that there's got to be a better way that, maybe we can't change the whole world, and maybe we can't change, the tone of the election or the tone of the protests or anything else that's going on. But what I believe is possible is that we can shift within our little bubble. Each of us, we can show up better. We can be kinder. We can be more thoughtful in how we show up and contribute to the conversation, so that we are not inspiring more hate, because there's enough of that shit going on out there. And why do we want to put it into our world? And, when you think about resilience, we have to be able to navigate through the challenges of life, right? And that's what resilience is all about. And the reset is about, like, how do you take a day that maybe wasn't going right or is going right, and get ready for the next part of the day and really enjoy and have a great day, right? But it's not about sweeping things under the rug. Being resilient doesn't take away the suckage, right? What it does is it helps you figure out how you're going to show up in the midst of the suckage. And I think that's where we each have our power. Even if we're angry, even if we think that, somebody is doing something incredibly wrong. And I have a few examples. And by the way, I want to say this. I have some really strong opinions about politics, about mandating vaccines. I have, have had a lot of thoughts on this. That is not what this conversation is about. So my personal opinions are not going to enter this conversation. But I know that what I could say is that early in a lot of this campaign and the politics and certain things that were going on, I was having those really strong opinions, and I made a few mistakes in how I showed up. And, with friends, and I did the very things that I'm going to suggest that each of us don't do. And so learn from our mistakes. But as you know, like, part of one of my Solution activation principles is your second response, get to it ASAP. And so early on, I wasn't able to have a conversation about some of those more like really divisive topics, as well as now I can have those conversations because I've done the work behind the scenes so that I can show up in the right way to not add more hate, not add more anger, not add more to the crappy situation that we're already dealing with. We've got some comments on the side. Let me say hello. Well, hello over from Facebook's. Great to have you here with us. Damith, I think. So you can DM me the proper names so I will learn that if I didn't do it right. Awesome to have you here. And here's Greg saying, I wholeheartedly agree. I feel like the traffic volume and select car exhaust volume, along with overall aggressive behavior, is carrying over to other aspects of day-to-day life, particularly anti-social media. Yeah, there's just so much hate. And the problem is, and when I talk about the ice cube that became the snowman, if you don't know that analogy, you got to go back and watch one of the videos. It will just help you see how things are wrong. But one of the things we do is we have misplaced emotion. And when we add into our tasks and our obstacles and our day-to-day life, misplaced emotion, meaning I'm really angry about this, and I'm going to take it out on this thing that is technically unrelated, even though it may feel related, because this guy's obviously an idiot driver who doesn't know how to signal lane changes and almost cut me off. They're not related. But the emotion, if we're not emotionally disciplined, if we're not self-aware, if we're not showing up and feeling like we can say, okay, you know what? I'm really angry about this. I feel a lack of control over here. And because of that, I have the propensity right now to maybe be a little bit more short-tempered. So I'm going to take that awareness out into the world so that I can catch myself before I show up like an asshole. That's the goal. Because without the awareness, this negative feeling, this supercharged emotion can just come out wherever it needs to come out. And that's not helpful, because then what we've done is we've created another problem for somebody else. Somebody who is probably already having a really bad day is now having more of a bad day because you showed up and dumped your misplaced emotion on them. And so having this is really important. So the first thing I'm going to suggest is that each of us take time to reflect, understand what are we angry about, what issues are we most passionate about, where do we stand, without all the propaganda, without all of the divisive media and social media. Just sit down and figure out your opinion on the topic as independently as you can from all of those other influences. The other thing that I think really helped me to be able to shift and not show up really in an angry way with the conversations around some of the big topics here in Canada right now is I'm really trying to seek to understand all sides. And I think so often we have conversations when we're seeking to prove that our opinion is right. And so it's a shift, right? Just because somebody disagrees with you doesn't mean, just because they have an opinion, whether they agree with you or not, doesn't actually make it factual. And so I remember, when I sold cars, it was in my early 20s, my manager at the time always said, a person's perception is their reality. And so whatever the perception is, you could have somebody who is sitting there consuming only news, has absolutely nothing else positive going on into their life. They are, just have been inside for the last 18 months. They're so afraid of COVID. Maybe they've lost a family member or a friend from COVID, and they're not willing to live their life. They're not willing to see anything positive. They are just consuming hatred all the time and feeding into it. And you know what? You can't. I think we've still got to understand that person and where they're coming from, because if you put it like that, right, then it's harder to be in an angry fight with that person because they don't know any differently. Just like they could be looking at you who's like, you know what, I'm going to live my life and I'm going to get out there and I'm going to do and choose positivity and finding the good and the silver linings and interacting with friends in a safe way, but I'm still going to like not put my life on hold, right? They're looking at you and thinking you're absolutely crazy. And so you've got two people with two different perceptions who are coming together, and instead of seeking to understand the other side, each side is trying to seek to prove that their side is right. And neither person is open. And I think at this point, many of us have already formed our opinions. So it's not about having these conversations often to be able to bring somebody over to your side of thinking. And I think often we're doing that. I think where we need to be, if we want to heal society, if we want to move forward and have less hatred and all of this building up, I think what we need to do is we actually have to seek to understand so that we can coexist and find the in between, find the acceptable. Nobody's going to be in a situation where they're going to be totally happy with the outcome of anything, because we're not going so far to one side, hopefully, or so far to another side, hopefully, that nobody's side is going to be respected. We got to find the common ground. We've got to find the way forward. And so that is the first piece. And then the next piece I think is really important, is to avoid generalizations. So I had an experience with a service provider of mine who he does my hair. I guess I can say that. He does my hair. He's done my hair for 12 years. I'm not getting rid of him. I love him. He's awesome. I don't want to throw him under the bus. So pretend I'm talking about somebody else. And actually, no, he was very accepting when I called him out on it. But he said, like, he was actually, and he's not the only person. I mean, I have just had so many people who are like those idiots who, heck, our prime minister, if he's still our prime minister tomorrow, I don't know, but our prime minister said those people out there, they're the problem. Mike Duffy got fired from the Senate by using the word those people, and like creating this divisive nature. And so some of the commentary I've heard is that, all anti-vaxxers are also anti-maskers, right? Or which is not true. Not all anti-vaxxers. And by the way, I'm vaccinated. I'm double vaccinated. Yay, proud for me. But I'm saying not like these generalizations of stereotypes. That's like saying all Catholics thought residential schools were, a good idea. I don't know much about the situation. I know that there's a lot of things. It's like saying all, people of a certain religion are terrorists. Like, come on, people. Like, let's stop using these generalizations of pockets of our population. There are jerks within every side of every label of every story, every religion, every circumstance, every belief. Those exist. And not every person should be painted with the same brush. And I think what happens when we're in this very divisive situation that we're in right now is this generalization feeds the anger, because it removes people from the actual, like, they're human beings too, who, by the way, if we seek to understand, have a perspective that you may not understand at this moment, but if you were to try to figure out, at least to respect them as human beings. And maybe they're just scared. Maybe they don't want to do this, right? Or, and just like, I think people who are scared on, the other side, everybody has valid points. And so when we think that our point of view is the only point of view that is valid, we get into a very, very, very dangerous situation, I think, with generalizing and creating an us versus them. And especially here in Canada, I know we have people from around the world who I'm connected with, who are, on my email list, or who, I'm connected to on the various social media platforms. And I know what's happening in other parts of the world. Now, The generalizations just are not the right thing to do. I think it fuels the fire, shall we say. And that's in all aspects, right? Stephen's got a good point here. My approach is avoid the negative tones and focus on leading in my company, community, or boards I serve by focusing on the positive. Perfect, right? And Stephen, you've been around politics long enough. You've been on different boards and had a very successful business. And people are going to have differing opinions. And if we just expect that, and then we can be respectful, right? And maybe you don't have to be positive. Maybe if you want to get into the weeds, that's fine. Like, we got to debate the issues. We've got to go hard on certain things that we believe in, but we got to do it, I believe, from a place of respect and understanding, as opposed to generalizations and hatred that's unwarranted. Do you think it's possible that people group others into convenient generalized categories because it seems to make sense in a world that is not making sense? Yes, absolutely. But the thing is that if it makes sense and it's false, then you're just creating a new perspective that isn't actually serving the purpose at the same time. So I think our generalization, it's easier to say, oh, they're wrong, they're idiots. Like, I can't believe the number of people who have been called idiots. And I don't think that because somebody has a differing opinion of me, they're an idiot. Right? Like, I feel like there's a big gap between determining somebody idiocracy and the fact that they don't agree with me. And what I'm hearing with all of this divisiveness is that if you don't agree, you suck. There's something wrong with you. You're a flawed human being, or you just don't agree. And you may have a valid point and I may have a valid point. And, that's the biggest issue. And in many of these really divisive issues, that the two perspectives are and the hundreds of perspectives on the continuum, most of them are quite valid, depending on which lens you will look through. There's an old saying that I used to love. Do you want to be right or do you want to be rich? Sometimes we just don't have to prove our ego to be right. And there is a time when it's just not worth it to open your mouth. Now, I'm not suggesting to not, if you want to protest. If you want to, maybe don't interrupt the patients who are trying to get into the hospital to protest. Just saying, there are better places to protest than outside hospital doors that would be more respectful. But I agree with your right to protest. And, and Brene Brown talks about this, and I'm such a huge fan of hers. And one of the reasons is because she talks about this very thought, that if you truly believe in tolerance, then you can't have tolerance without tolerance. Like, you have to tolerate people who don't believe what you believe. Because tolerance that is filtered tolerance. So I tolerate you as long as I believe, because you believe what I believe, or I agree that you can believe that, but I don't believe that you can believe this, and I can still tolerate you. Now, there are lines, obviously, moral, ethical lines around, murder and rape and incest and all of those things that we're not going to allow to have. There's a line of tolerance. I get that. But when it comes to beliefs, religious, etc., I think we have to be a little bit more tolerant of tolerance. It's often the people who say how tolerant they are who are the ones who are the most not tolerant. But anyway, I digress. So figuring out when to keep your mouth shut, like when to just let somebody vent. And I've had this happen maybe several times, now that I've had to process some of my own feelings on some of this issue, where people have come in even to my house and, had a quick visit and then gone off the handle about, all those people and what's wrong with them and they're idiots and on and on and on. And I just listen to them because you know what? I'm not going to be able to, every now and again, I'll throw in a fact or two about, just trying to calm the situation a little or change the topic or, whatever. But people need to vent, and maybe I don't need to stop them from doing that, right? Because adding fuel onto the fire, but I also won't stoke the fire. So if even if they believe what I believe and they're going off in a huge direction of just anger and blaming and all of this stuff, I'm not going to stoke that fire either, because I'm going to respect and I'm going to learn and aim to understand from all sides. Let's see what Greg is saying. This is a deep conversation for our resilience reset, isn't it? I feel that we've lost so much civility. Yes, this is my point. And I'm not just talking about the election. It has been so fueled, and influencers, media, corporations, political, social, etc., seem content to capitalize on that polarization, perhaps to push agendas. This is the thing. It's easier to jump on the hate bandwagon than it is to moderate oneself, be emotionally disciplined, and actually talk about the issues from a factual perspective without spin or without an agenda. It's literally human nature easier. It's harder to be civil. And I think if we could each, like I said, we can't fix the whole world, but each of us can choose how we're going to show up in our spot. Like Stephen was saying earlier, he chooses to just focus on the positive things. Great. I'm entering conversations and trying to be civil about having them. After a couple experiences where I wasn't that, I was a little extra passionate, just saying. But I think that how can we best show up? How can we, there was one of the signs, I love the sign wars that all happen out there. And one of the signs is tweet unto others as you would you would have them tweet unto you. It's as if, and I think social media has fueled this a lot too, right? To your point, Greg, it's so easy to sit behind a computer. And that's why, as the story I was telling earlier, as I was reading one of the news sites posts on LinkedIn, I was gobsmacked at the responses and the approach. And I was just we curate, each of us curates our own social media feed. So if you are seeing all of the hatred, if you are just getting inundated with negative, and part of these conversations, that's on you. That's you fueling the algorithm to know that you're susceptible to that hatred, and it's going to pull you more. Unless I go looking for it, I don't find any of it, because I choose to surround myself with, especially online, I'm reading very positive things. I'm following people who are thought leaders. I'm on this journey of personal and professional development, and I just want to continue to be the best I could possibly be in this human experience. And oh my God, I got a long way to go. And I every time you get sucked into the rabbit hole of hatred and negativity and divisiveness and piling on and just stoking the fire, you are taking yourself away from moving forward and growing as a person. You are taking yourself away from having joy and peace and happiness and contributing positively to society. That's the kind of stuff. Each of us has our own personal responsibility to choose how we show up, what emails we read, what emails we forward, what posts we continue to engage in, and what arguments we have. And when I shut up, when I don't want to have a conversation, when I know somebody is so extreme on one end or the other that I just can't reason with them, because the goal is not to, like I said, I think people are where they are. And every time we try to pull somebody over to another side is, look at this hand motion going on here, folks. If I turn this into a podcast, you won't get that. You won't get that opportunity to see that cool hand motion. But it's like, we can't just try to, like, if we're trying to pull people over, people resist. There's more resistance, right? So this is why I'm saying, like, come together, have conversations, and you know what? Bite your tongue, squeeze your butt cheek together, put your toe into your shoe, like whatever you need to do to remind yourself to cool your jets so that you don't go. Because if you're coming into a situation with anger, and you're coming into a situation with anger, and this person's coming into a situation with anger, it's just a whole bunch of sparks and anger and no understanding and no progression forward. And there's just too much of that shit right now. And each of us can take our own responsibility to stop fueling the fire. Like, I love seeing the protests that are peaceful and respectful and with a purpose, and go for it. Like, I'm so impressed by each and every one of you who shows up. I've just never been a protester, so I don't show up to those things. I don't know why. I don't know. Not my thing. But anyway, I show up in other ways. I try to contribute. I, have conversations. I used to be involved politically, and then I just found it was entirely far too negative for my liking to want to be doing that. Yeah. So read the room. Is it the right time to make your point? Do you want to be right? Do you want to keep friends? I mean, I think there are families being ripped apart because of the divisiveness in our society about COVID, about politics. There are friendships that have been going on for 30 years that have ceased to exist because of a difference of opinion. And to me, that is a shame. To me, that means the challenges, that means the suckage wins, right? Even though it's an inanimate object, they win. Whoever they are, they win. And so it's up to each of us to show up and try to do what we can to heal the divide. How's that for a resilience reset today, folks? Woo! Normally don't talk that deeply, but I'm so sad for our society. And like, Canada is acting in a way that is even worse, than because we don't expect this level of divisiveness from Canadians, I don't think. And just hearing people who are kind otherwise just going off the handle in the deep end on, those people, and and not being willing to understand another point of view, and cutting people out of their lives, because they have a differing opinion on something. Okay, well then don't see them in person if they're vaccinated or unvaccinated or whatever, that's fine. But cut them out of your life and tell them you think they're stupid and you have a nice life. I never want to talk to you because you're the problem. I know stories like this. And that to me is heartbreaking, absolutely gut-wrenching, heartbreaking, and also completely unnecessary. Sad, but I wonder what's wrong with people, right? And you know what is so I'll push back, Liliana, because I'll say because judgment of what's wrong with them, right? And I know what you're saying, it's true. But here's the thing, they're just scared and hurt and navigating the unknown and exhausted and not sure what's going to happen in the future, which is the same as navigating the unknown. Sorry, I've repeated myself. I think that's what's happening. I think there's a lot of burnout. I think people are stressed. I think people are inundated with negativity from the news media. I love my friends in the media, but my God, do you guys love a good sensational storyline? And it's maybe that's just not what we need right now. Maybe we could use less explosive words to help calm the situation. It doesn't help when our leaders are fueling the situation. I was shocked when the Prime Minister said, those people out there, they're the problem. That line on its own, forget about the politics of it. That line is so divisive to create an us versus them. I just, it didn't make sense to me why that was the right way to go. But I guess it's politics, right? Create a divide. I don't know. But yeah, I think we know what's wrong with people. People are hurting. Are we devolving instead of evolving? I think so. I think, in fairness, I think we've devolved. I think we're on the we're going backwards somehow, some way. But actually, that's not totally true. I think in certain areas, absolutely, and people are getting more and more heated and more into the muck, and then there are other people who have these beautiful stories of rising above and just being like, you know what? I'm gonna live in my little bubble. Right? I think, because it's all our perspective, and what do we see, and what do we choose to see, and how do we choose to show up in the world, and what we focus on we get more of, and what we attract, like attracts like. And it's interesting. I know the last couple times we've been talking, and I'm so grateful for those of you who show up to my resilience resets. Like, I feel like we've got our own little group together. And a few times we've talked about the fact that, I've been doing this. I have well over 100 resilience resets out on the internet. And I mean, I don't have that many views. Like, people aren't coming, right? And I'm going to keep doing it because I love it. And for those of you who do show up, that's all I care about. And that's great. And then I was watching someone who has almost 1 million followers and talks not about like what I talk about, but very much trying to inspire people and whatnot. And she's attracted some haters, like to the point where there are people who are doing like calling the cops on her, and like it's a horrible situation, and it's been going on for years. And I think, you know what? I'm grateful that I have managed to attract into my life a small, beautiful group of humans who every day I'm like, ooh, who's going to come today? And I'm so grateful because we all show up feeling ready to be hopefully inspired, to have some laughs. We come from a positive angle. We don't get sucked into the mud. Like, the whole point of this in the afternoon is to get us out of the mud, get us out of the muck. Right? So I'm grateful you're here. We're the positive ones out there making stuff happen. So let's keep doing what we're doing, and let's hopefully we inspire others to show up just a little bit better. I hope we don't devolve that far. Talking about followers, I tried to find you on Audible and I couldn't. Oh, you know why? Oh, because like for Audible, for the books, like the download, I haven't recorded the book yet as an Audible book, only as a written book. And I actually was thinking I might put all of the resilience resets, the audio, up as a podcast. Right? So that people, if you're driving or whatever, you don't have to watch the whole video. You could just listen to the podcast. Now, when we do that, keep in mind, you're not going to get all of these movements like this from earlier. But yeah, that's awesome. Okay. So I need to be more findable. I will be more findable. I'm trying to get some team members in place to help me do that. So that'll be great. Anyhow, here we are. What a beautiful day. Thank you for being here. And, just every little bit helps, I think. People are hurting. Each of us can do our part to show up. And you may be thinking, I'm guessing the great idea is to be more findable. Yeah, based on your laughers. I will work on it. Yeah. And, sometimes it's like, well, is it my responsibility to show up better for everybody else? You know what? It's the only thing we can control. So yes, it is. Because each of us creates our own little world and how it comes into our existence and what we pull into it. So if we choose to show up as best as we possibly can, we're going to get the best of other people. Oh. laugh about missing my moves. You should have seen a move the other day. I did an interview on podcast. So I've got new glasses. I don't know if anybody noticed that. They really don't have enough anti-reflection. So we're gonna fix that. But they haven't been fitted properly because I just grabbed them and left. And so the other day I was, it was quite hot and I guess I was sweaty. So I had the other pair of glasses on and it kept moving down like this and I kept doing this. And then like midway through, I just did a costume change. You wouldn't get that if it was only on a podcast. That kind of thing only happens on video. Anyway, thank you for being here. And I am so grateful for you. Tomorrow, I'm so excited. I got to put it up as an event. I have Heather, who is the founder of W North, which is a professional group for women across the country. It's still going to be a great conversation for the men, so please show up. Heather and I are going to be talking about in-person events, some of the challenges of, where people are at and their comfort levels, some of the programs they have going on, and a whole bunch of other great things. She's an incredible founder, and I'm super excited to have her on the call tomorrow. So tune in for that at 3:15 p.m. Eastern, and Wednesday's Wildcard Wednesday, and then on Thursday is the book Relentless, talking about mental toughness. You know how I feel about mental toughness as a word. But anyway, we'll talk. That'll be Thursday. Okay, so have the best week. And dare I say, may you stress less, do more, and be happier. And today I'm going to add, as the world is out there dividing or devolving, one or the other, be kinder. Kinder than you think you need to be, because people probably need it. All right. Awesome. Have the best day.